Today I'm going to tell you how I roast this beautifully washed coffee from Colombia. I'm going to introduce you to the concept of an Omni roast, and I'm going to reveal what is my personal preference of drinking coffee when I'm going to holiday. I'm Ingo from Roast Rebels, and now let's go. So we have got this beautifully washed coffee from Colombia, new in our assortment. We source it with Coffeenet. Coffeenet is a family that is producing coffee in Colombia, but they've also got a network all over Colombia. So we source this coffee from their network, and it's coming from the Insa municipality in the western side of Cauca. It's coming from a region where you have a lot of volcanic soil. It's produced by a lot of smallholder farmers in an average altitude of about 1,700 to 2,000 meters above sea level. It's mainly Caturra and Catuai, and it's a classic washed coffee. When we cupped this coffee, we found notes of green apple, we found some citrus notes, but at the same time we also found really beautiful caramelic or toffee notes in it. So therefore, this is a coffee that is really versatile and it gives you a lot of possibilities to roast and brew it. You can roast it and brew it as a classic filter coffee. I personally like to do that also because it gives then these really refreshing notes. But you could also, if you like to, even roast and drink it as an espresso. I have to tell you, I personally like to drink specialty coffee as a filter, for example, or AeroPress or whatever. When it comes to espresso, I am quite conservative, and there I prefer coffees with less acidity. But a lot of people, more and more people then like these espressos that have more acidity, that are more in the specialty region. And if you are into that, then this coffee is beautiful for you. Me personally, when I'm going to drink an espresso, I would probably add it in a blend. So I would have some Robusta, a Brazilian coffee, and then add this coffee, and this will give a beautiful blend. But today I will talk about another type of brewing. I personally like Colombian coffees, then also, for example, in a cafetière, so in a French press. It's also beautiful if you like to drink, for example, a Café Crème, so a coffee that you drink every day, where you can have a little bit of fruitiness, but still it needs to be balanced and round. And here, this coffee gives you a beautiful range. And when we're talking about this range, then we are going to talk about a roasting method, which we are calling Omni roast. I personally don't really like this expression Omni roast too much because it doesn't really give a clear indication of what it is for. But on the other hand, it's also what it is because it gives you quite a broad range. It's a quite versatile style of roasting. So when we figure out what kind of roasting types we typically have or are talking about, then we have on one hand filter roasts. And when we are talking about filter roasts, we are usually then talking about specialty filter roasts. So roasts where we have clarity, roasts where we have acidity, roasts that are bright. So this is then typically what we are talking about when we're talking about filter roasts. So really then these specialty brewed filter roasts. And then on the other hand, we have espresso roasts, and in espresso roasts, we then are mainly talking about body, we're talking about texture, we're talking about caramelization, a bit more complexity. So this is then the profile we're generally looking for in an espresso. But then as said, there is quite a broad range of ways you can drink and enjoy coffee. So even when you think about the filter brewing method or batch brewing, like the way most people are drinking is then even a little bit different from the way we like to drink it in specialty coffee. So a lot of people like to have these filter brews that are a little bit darker than the Surwave brews, that have a little bit more body, that has a little bit less acidity. And then we have the range from there over methods like, for example, the Bialetti, French press, then up to then like fully automated machine where you then get something like a Café Crème out of it. And therefore, the Omni roast is actually really, really suitable because it then really gives you this versatility and can cover this whole range. An Omni roast is a roast that you can then end a little bit lighter or a bit darker. So you have kind of a range that you can do here. And then what in general the concept of Omni roasting is really, it's about this balance between filter and espresso roast. So what you're looking here is to pronounce sweetness, to pronounce a mouthfeel, but then to also still have a little bit of this freshness, a little bit of these acidic notes, but not too expressive. When you're going to roast this coffee in an Omni roast profile, then what you can do is to give quite a lot of energy at the beginning. Although I have to say in the preheating, I wouldn't be too high. I would be quite high in the preheating, but not as high as you go, for example, with a washed coffee from Africa, like a Kenyan coffee or a washed Ethiopian coffee, because the beans are a little bit less dense. They're quite dense, but a little bit less. So you go quite high, but not extremely high in the preheating temperature. But then when you have went over the turning point, then you can give quite a lot of energy in the roast. And you can give quite a lot of energy up to then the yellowing point. But then when it goes through yellowing, then you can take the burner a little bit down in comparison to, for example, a filter roast where you then want to achieve first crack relatively quick. So that you at the end are reaching first crack a bit in between of the times that you're typically reaching for first crack for a filter coffee or an espresso. So let's assume, for example, when you're roasting a clear, bright, like a specialty filter coffee, you want to reach first crack at around 6:30 in your roaster, for example. And when you're then roasting an espresso in your machine, you're reaching the first crack at about 8:30. So for an Omni roast, you would then target to reach the first crack somewhere in the middle, like let's say about 7 minutes 30. So start really high, but then take the burner a little bit back and go a little bit slower into then the Maillard phase. Not too slow, not to bake the coffee, but a little bit slower than you would do, for example, for a filter coffee. And then when it comes to the development phase, you are then actually in the position, or you have then the choice to target the development time that you like for this roast, to have it either a little bit lighter or either a little bit darker. So typically for this like clear filter roasts, I often target then a development time ratio of about 10 to 16%, depending on how light or dark I roast. Typically then for espresso, I target, let's say, about 17 to 24% of roast development time ratio. And then for an Omni roast, I would be landing at somewhere around like 14 to 19% development time ratio. And here you can then really then decide, do you go a little bit darker where you have a little bit less acidity, a little bit more body, or do you stay a little bit lighter where you have then a little bit more acidity, a bit more of these apple notes? This is then the decision that you can take. I have here the Kaffelogic Nano 7 because I know a lot of you, especially if you're then into home roasting, you're working with this machine. And actually the filter profile packs that are on this machine are quite classic Omni roasting profiles. You find on the website of Kaffelogic now also some more specific roasting profiles like a filter profile pack or an espresso profile pack, but the ones that are coming with the machine, like the washed KL washed, for example, which is a profile that is one of the newer packs here, is a profile that is then really going into this Omni roast segment. And here you can then look that you reach, for example, a roast level of somewhere around 1, which is still a bit light. So you can go between 1 and 1.5, maybe even 2 if you like a little bit darker roast. So this is probably the range I would roast this coffee on the Kaffelogic Nano 7 when using then the KL wash profile. If you're having another machine, then as said, I would then target this roasting profile style that I just mentioned. So this is it about roasting. Now I'm going to reveal how I like to drink this coffee when I'm in holidays. Now I'm going to reveal a secret to you. We pre-produced this video before I went to holiday, so chances are high that while you are watching this video, I'm sitting somewhere outside with Nina and we are going to have the coffee exactly in the way I'm going to describe now. So the way I like to drink the coffee, for example, on a Sunday morning or on holidays, just in situations where we have time, but also on holidays where we don't take too much coffee equipment with us, is the so-called French press. So the French press is a quite light and simple method to take away with you. Just have to be a bit careful because it's usually then made out of glass. And it's a preparation method that gives you a really nice balance. It gives you quite a bit of body in the coffee, and therefore I also then like to have a coffee which is exactly a bit like this, that I can roast a tiny bit darker, but that still gives me some freshness, some acidity, some really nice fruity notes, but still then also in a way that is quite balanced, where I can then, for example, add milk if I want, or I can then also drink it then just as a black coffee. And now I'm going to reveal my favorite French press recipe with you. What I'm going to take then is a Comandante, because usually then when you're traveling, when you're on holidays, you're probably going to take the hand grinder with you, not a big grinder like the EK from Malkönig that I have here. That would then already fill our car. So I really like these Comandantes or just a hand grinder to take with me. And here I have then roasted the coffee like a little bit in a medium dark roast. So my recipe is 500 milliliters of water, because then we're usually drinking the coffee together. 500 milliliters of water, 30 grams of coffee. I'm then doing about 27 clicks on the Comandante, so quite coarse the coffee. And then I'm going to brew it together for about 4 minutes, and I'm going to use water which is around 95 degrees if I have the possibility to have a kettle with me that is then really on Celsius, so it's quite precise. Otherwise, I let it cook and then let it cool down for a little bit. But now here I have my kettle, so I'm going to choose 95 degrees. So a little bit warmer than I'm usually doing it for a filter coffee, but also then the French press or cafetière is also losing a little bit of temperature due to the material that it has and also due to the low isolation that it has. So yeah, let's start. I'm going to fill my grinder with 30 grams of this coffee. This is going to take a little bit of time, so we are going to fast forward this, not to bore you too much. So the coffee is ready. I'm now going to put it in my French press. You can even preheat the French press a little bit before. It's something that I usually like to do then at home. So I'm going to give a little bit of water inside while I'm grinding the coffee. Now I'm going to get my water. So I like to fill it in a way that the coffee is as well as possible then mixed up in the water. But since this is never going to be perfect, I also like to give the coffee a short stir. Now I also actually activated my timer, because I'm going to wait for about 4 minutes until the coffee is ready. So I've added the water. I have stirred it a bit in order to then mix the coffee, because it's hard to really then mix it fully with the water coming in. I started the timer. I'm going to wait for about 4 minutes while covering the coffee, so that I'm not going to lose too much of heat. But then the part is still up so that it doesn't press on the coffee. By the way, just to mention, if you like this kind of video, then give it a like and subscribe. On one hand, we are publishing videos about every week. On the other hand, I really like then to know which kind of content you like, so that we can produce more videos with that style of content. So if you like this kind of content, give it a like so that we have a good feedback from you and can produce more videos like this in the future. 4 minutes is now over. And what you can do, you don't have to, but I actually like to, before I'm pressing down the coffee, to take out this crust. So you can take 2 spoons, just take out the biggest portion of the crust up there, and then press it down. And the coffee is ready. I hope this video was helpful to you and fun to watch. If you're interested in the new San Sebastian washed coffee from Colombia, then head over to our website roasttravels.com, where you get it. Be quick, because we have only a limited amount of this coffee. Also, if you're interested in a machine like the Kaffelogic Nano 7, an Aglio Bullet, or any other coffee roasting machine, You find this also on our website, as well as some tips, tricks, and information about green coffee beans, about coffee roasting machines, and about coffee roasting in general. Also, if you have any particular question, I'm always happy to hear from you. You'll find my contact on roastables.com.